There are some movies that I can only recommend to friends if it involves drinking, because while I enjoy them, the premises of the movies are just really, really silly. Sharknado, Snakes on a Plane, pretty much any alligator movie. Obviously, I am not alone in enjoying these types of films, as there's a steady stream of shark movies and creature features. And while most are mindless fun, what I've begun to notice is that quite a few seem to have an environmentalist character, someone who cares about nature to an off putting degree, and who tends to fall into one of two categories: annoyingly naive or eco terrorist. Under the naive category, we see cases such as in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where Claire Dearing runs the Dinosaur Protection Group and works to save the dinosaurs on Isla Nublar from extinction from an upcoming volcanic eruption. This is presented as a positive goal, one who is wrongly looked down upon by others from Claire's perspective. Meanwhile, Ian Malcolm's proclamation that the dinosaurs have had their turn and should be allowed to perish is the obvious, more rational response. And when shit hits the fan, and surprise, surprise, dinosaurs are hunting humans once again, it becomes obvious that the Save the Dinosaurs was a naive position that led to the loss of human lives. Similarly, in Netflix's 2024 Under Paris, a young environmentalist woman notes that the shark which killed protagonist Sophia's husband and crew earlier in the film is traveling under Paris. Instead of helping to kill the shark, which was noted as being especially dangerous and which has already accumulated a large kill count, she decided to take a swim with it to illustrate how safe sharks are, dies when the shark attacks, spurring on a panic that leads to the deaths of 12 other people. Eco-terrorists have a wider variety of characterization, from the more grounded depictions found in 28 Days Later, where the rage virus is released due to environmentalists breaking into a Cambridge laboratory and releasing the infected chimpanzee against the cautioning of the scientists in the lab, leading to the start of the outbreak, to the likes of Thanos or in Kingsman, where Valentine intends to have humanity self-destruct to save the environment.
Saving its core temperature to kill the virus. Planet Earth works the same way. Global warming is the fever. Mankind is the virus.
There are, of course, plenty of positive depictions of environmentalism. Fern Gully, many of Studio Ghibli's works, Avatar with the Blue People, The Lorax, and a myriad of other movies support conservatism. But you'll notice that in movies geared towards an adult audience specifically, it's more likely for the eco-friendly character to be portrayed as a villain or an annoyance. The reason for this portrayal is obvious. As Sonny Bunch wrote in the Washington Post back in 2019, radical environmentalists have really been taking it on the chin at the multiplex. They are perfect villains for our times, well-intentioned enough to seem somewhat reasonable, but meddlesome busybodies whose hopes and dreams are to radically reduce standards of living in order to effect some utopian scheme or another that will return the world, or worlds, to an unsullied Eden. Environmentalists make a useful villain because their malevolence can be obscured by a patina of reasonableness. Global warming and other man-made problems are going to end the world if we don't do something, so just about anything is justified. But their villainy resonates with the masses because they actually do want to make life worse for people, for the most part. There's a reason France convulsed in recent weeks as middle-class protesters angered by taxes pushed for by environmentalists took to the streets. Environmentalists want to increase the cost of everyday goods and services by taxing carbon. They want you to fly less and to pay more via offsets when you do fly. They want you to stop eating meat. They want you to stop having kids. They want to deprive you of disabled-friendly plastic straws. And they're coming for your delightful balloons next. They want to turn your corpse into food for plants because even the sweet release of death cannot save you from the environmentalist menace. The stereotype of a typical vegan, as noted by Lindsay Brave, is someone who is often described as hippie, strict, healthy, weak, thin, entitled, elitist, preachy, arrogant, and superiority complex. Specific demographics may come to mind like white, female, and middle or upper class. This is only partly true, as the majority of vegans are female and are more likely to be liberal. However, the American vegetarian is twice as likely to be lower income than middle or upper class. Race is harder to measure, as sources that report these statistics have not made racial division clear, but it should be noted that worldwide there are plenty of people of color who follow a vegetarian diet due to religious or cultural reasons, such as followers of Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. Technically, this should place an Indian person as the face of veganism and vegetarianism, but the Western media portrayal of the crunchy white woman remains. This is particularly interesting as the insult often associated with environmentalists comes from India, where the first tree huggers originated.
I bet that you don't know where the term tree hugger comes from. The story is nothing short of inspiring, so listen up. So it all begins in the 1970s in the Indian region of the Himalayas. Now known as the Chipko movement, it was a passionate response to the rampant commercial deforestation that was taking place at the time. It all started because the people of the region realized that their well-being and livelihood was interconnected with the well-being of the forest. In their struggle to safeguard their natural resources, the villagers adopted a unique strategy: embracing trees. Hence, the term tree huggers was born. Villagers, often led by fearless women, hugged the trees as a form of protest to prevent the deforestation from happening. The Chipko movement had a significant influence on government policies. Some of the major wins of these efforts included the enactment of stricter conservation efforts as well as reforestation programs. So next time someone calls you a tree hugger, I hope you wear it with pride.
In 1730, 294 men and 69 women died trying to protect the trees of their village, which were planned to be used to build a palace. Their death at the hands of the foresters led to a royal decree that prevented any other trees from being cut down in any Bishnoi village, referring to the religious branch that the group belonged to. In the 1970s, the Chipko movement saw peasant women in northern India link arms to save trees from being cut down, and led to changes regarding the protection of forests and save those trees from being cut down. The use of the word as an insult is uninformed, as tree hugging has enacted real and lasting change and calls back to a massacre where hundreds of people died for their beliefs. Its use as an epithet for a person who values plants and animals more than people ignores that most environmentalists do not believe that, and that while inconvenient or considered odd, most protests or life choices by these groups are harmless and beneficial for the environment. There is no denying that the current treatment of animals in the livestock industry is bad. It's bad for the animals and it's bad for the environment. This is a fact, not an opinion. The majority of the world's meat comes from factory farms, where space is at a premium, resulting in cases such as egg-laying hens being confined to spaces so small that they peck at each other's feathers and bodies. Pregnant sows spend much of their pregnancies confined to a gestation crate, a metal enclosure that is scarcely wider and longer than the sow herself. Unable to even turn around, sows develop abnormal behaviors and suffer leg problems, bladder infections, and skin lesions. Growing pigs are confined to slatted, bare concrete floors. Stressed by crowding and boredom, they frequently resort to biting and inflicting wounds upon their penmates. In factory dairies, cows spend their entire lives confined to concrete. To boost production, some cows are injected with the growth hormone, RBGH or RBST, which increases the cow's likelihood of developing lameness and mastitis, a painful infection of the udder. According to Vivian Sandler in The Environmental Cost of Animal Agriculture contributes more greenhouse gas emissions than all forms of transportation combined, which is responsible for 13% of global emissions, uses 70% of all agricultural land, and requires huge amount of water, as producing a single pound of beef takes about 1,800 gallons, the equivalent of filling 39 bathtubs to the top. The portrayal of environmentalists as being naive, annoying, or dangerous has been used to make the demands and actions of environmentalists, especially white women environmentalists, seem crazy. But is decreasing meat consumption, not cutting down trees to make a massive police training facility, or demanding an oil pipeline not be built really so outrageous?
So these two chuckleheads just approved the largest oil terminal in U.S. history. The Seaport Oil Terminal is going to export 2 million barrels of oil every day. In terms of emissions, that's the same as building 90 new coal-fired power plants. If you didn't know, it's 2024. For the 10th month in a row, we just lived through the hottest month ever recorded in human history, and our supposed climate president just approved 2 million barrels of oil every day. I guess what I'm saying is, if you thought that our government was going to willingly wind down fossil fuels and really address the climate crisis, this is your sign. They're not going to stop until we make them.
Unfortunately, these many visible protests are often held by activists whose actions are useless or inflammatory.
How do vegans come up with such stupid ways to protest? Yesterday, a group of vegans put themselves into these concrete shoes and stood outside Starbucks holding up a sign because they're tired of the 50-cent upcharge on soy milk. These guys literally thought it was a good idea to pour wet concrete onto their feet, wait 1 or 2 days for it to dry, and then have somebody carry them in front of a Starbucks so they can hold a sign about how much they hate paying 50 cents upcharge for soy milk. Do you literally have nothing better to do with your time? Some of the idiot protesters protesters couldn't get their feet out. No surprise there, it's fucking concrete. What did you expect? So ambulances had to be called for these guys, wasting even more taxpayer dollars. A few of them were also arrested because they shut down an entire street because of their dumbass protests. These vegans, through their actions, are making a dickhead company like Starbucks look like the good guy. And it makes me feel bad for all the other cool vegans I know. The saddest part, these dummies probably feel like they accomplished their life mission.
Dozens of activists glued their hands to the roads in Germany to protest climate change. The German activist organization Last Generation blocked traffic on multiple highways. Police officers worked to detach the protesters' hands from the roads before carrying them away. At least 87 people were arrested.
I'm sick. I'm sick of greenwashing. I'm sick of your lies about the true environmental and social costs. No better justice for occupied land. No better justice for occupied land. This conference is sickening. Europe could meet its energy needs without exploiting former colonized countries. Your hydrogen lies block real solutions that we need for the climate crisis.
For example, PETA is well known for their shock tactics, as well as their extremist views regarding the treatment of animals. Often this is achieved by portraying this treatment as equivalent to human mistreatment, which is dehumanizing and inaccurate. PETA has compared the treatment of animals to the rape of human women, to slavery, and to the Holocaust.
Y'all come get your vegan friends. I saw this shit on Facebook and it gave me great pause. Because to this day, there are people out there who give more of a fuck about animal rights than human rights. Look, I get you guys want to defend the animals. There's a lot of grave mistreatment that takes place in both the farming industry, the zoo and animal entertainment industry, and a number of other atrocities. But what y'all not gonna do is compare atrocities. The same way I would never compare the Holocaust to slavery. The same way I would not compare child labor to slavery. Because at the end of the day, it's not an atrocity off. It's not a matter of who has it worse. It's a matter of how do we fix this shit. If you lead with false arguments like that, you're going to end up alienating a lot of people from your cause. All because your need to grab attention to it is greater than your sensitivity to the other people's pain that they've been through. Don't do that shit.
Slavery was a system of human oppression, wherein humans involved were aware of their mistreatment, and this could be communicated between oppressed and oppressor. Meanwhile, the suffering of animals in service of human consumption differs in that there is a lack of communication or proof of knowledge of the purpose of their existence. As Rais Suthan so aptly put it in The Enigma of Animal Suffering, if farm animals lack the complex forms of communication and access to information that would allow them to realize that they exist to become food for us, and if they don't experience physical tortures along the way, then they avoid all the worst aspects of human exploitation. Additionally, one major issue for irritation regarding demands for environmentalist action is that PETA and other environmentalists with similar beliefs seem disingenuous and hypocritical. PETA puts down 99% of the animals relinquished to their care. In 2011, it was found that out of 760 dogs impounded, they killed 713, arranged for 19 to be adopted, and farmed out 36 to other shelters, not necessarily no-kill ones. As for cats, they impounded 1,211, euthanized 1,198, transferred 8, and found homes for a grand total of 5. PETA also took in 58 other companion animals, including rabbits. It killed 54 of them. The rejection of other animal-based products are worse for the environment than their replacements, as can be seen in the rejection of leather. The use of vegan leather, which is plastic, leads to pollution via microplastics and a need to continually purchase new products, as they degrade way quicker than a leather jacket, which when taken care of can last generations.
Vegan leather is disappointing. Here's why. Dishonest companies marketing their plastic-based material now as vegan leather. That's not cool. While these do not come from animals, in my opinion, they do not truly align with the values of sustainability and environmental friendliness that my vegan friends has. These PU and acrylic alternatives are plastic-based. To me, true vegan leather is coming from natural sources like pineapple, mushrooms, and even cactus. I respect the good intention companies truly innovating in this leather space like Deserto, whose cactus leather is used in some of Fossil's vegan leather collections. This is a good representation of a vegan leather alternative since it's coming from a cactus and organic natural material waste turned into a fabric that can be used instead of leather for people who don't want to use animal-based products. And it is still environmental friendly and sustainable.
Eating locally is far more useful to protecting the environment than importing food from over long distances, for example. It also ignores the cultural relevance of food in certain cultures or the availability of a vegan diet.
Veganism, plant-based in particular, is a diet for the privileged people who can choose to do so. I can choose to do it. You can choose to do it. If you are Mrs. Smith, working 2 minimum wage jobs, okay, in this country, trying to feed your kids, are you really going to be concerned with your pulses and making sure the supplements are right to actually feed your kids so they can have a vegan diet? No, you want to feed your kids, all right? And so what annoys me about evangelical plant-based and vegan is not that people do it. People should do what they want to do. But what they do is they make other people feel bad by not having that diet, particularly when they don't have the choice to do it. That is what annoys me.
In a place like Cambodia, it is certainly possible to be vegan or vegetarian, but with limited funds, the choices for a healthy diet may require animal products or byproducts. The assumption that anyone can become vegan lies on a belief in the food availability and time required for that switch. The same women who berate me for cooking meatballs are also likely not impacting animal suffraging as much as I am by working with an animal charity. So in a lot of ways, the words and arguments on the issue seem to take precedence over actually taking action to help the environment. Some feminists argue that environmentalism is a feminist issue. They point to the impact of climate change, which will disproportionately impact women and girls. UN Women notes that women and girls experience the greatest impacts of climate change, which amplifies existing gender inequalities and poses unique threats to their livelihoods, health, and safety. This is due to the prevalence of women in agriculture, as well as the ensuing escalation of social, political, and economic tensions in fragile and conflict-affected settings, which leads to women and girls facing increased vulnerabilities to all forms of gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence, human trafficking, child marriage, and other forms of violence. Additionally, when disasters strike, women are less likely to survive and more likely to be injured due to long-standing gender inequalities that have created disparities in information, mobility, decision-making, and access to resources and training. In the aftermath, women and girls are less able to access relief and assistance, further threatening their livelihoods, well-being, and recovery, and creating a vicious cycle of vulnerability to future disasters. Women's and girls' health is endangered by climate change and disasters by limiting access to services and health care, as well as increasing risk related to maternal and child health. Research indicates that extreme heat increases incidence of stillbirth, and climate change is increasing the spread of vector-borne illnesses such as malaria, dengue fever, and Zika virus, which are linked to worse maternal and neonatal outcomes. However, is it required to be vegan to be feminist? Must you give up air conditioning and plastic straws to call yourself a Radfem? Feminism covers many topics, as many aspects impact women, but at some point it becomes more focused on other issues than on feminism. I can certainly understand a need to change how we treat animals and the environment, and even see where the argument that veganism is a requirement comes from. But as my focus is on women's liberation, I do not think that it's a requirement to avoid meat or animal byproducts. I do not think that addressing speciesism is a requirement for respecting animals or for fighting for women's rights.
So you actually believe that you aren't an animal?
Of course not. So what are you? I'm a human being. I'm a Homo sapien.
We're mammals.
Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous.
I'm sorry, but you don't believe that humans are animals. That is insane.
Ask God if He made you an animal. Ask God. Try that.
I'm sorry, where is this God? And by the way, if God and the devil were in a room with a baby lamb, who would slit the baby lamb's throat?
The comparison of human suffering to animal suffering centers the belief that animals have a consciousness that should be respected, and that speciesism, the belief that humans are inherently worth more or are better than animals, is wrong. This belief can be traced back to religion, as both Christianity and Islam note that animals are there to serve humans and that humans rule over animals. Now, while there are certainly comparisons to be made to the beliefs regarding the treatment of women, there are certainly arguments to be made on the need for feminists to address climate concerns. But like a spectrum, there comes a point where the focus is no longer on human females with an overlap of environmentalism, but on the environment with an overlap of feminism. We, as human beings, are omnivores. I think that we have an obligation to treat all animals humanely, but I don't judge meat eating as inherently wrong any more than I would judge a tiger for eating a rabbit. And I certainly don't think any woman is less feminist for enjoying a little bacon. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I got quite a few weird asks and comments recently about this topic, and I've been working on it for a minute. And recently I was, like I mentioned, I was watching Under Paris. And I noticed, like, thinking back on all the monster flicks that I've seen, and for some reason my mind decided to blank on them when it was time to write the script. But I remember, like, in one of the Lake Placid movies, Betty White feeding the alligators because they are valuable. Their lives are just as valuable as human lives. And you'll notice that kind of trend in a lot of movies where there's an environmentalist or a vegan or a person who just thinks the environment is an important thing to worry about, and they're the bad guy. And it's not just veganism, obviously. It's everything about the environment. There's been so many cases of an environmentalist being a villain because, as stated earlier in the video, you understand why, but you think, wow, you went too far over the line. Great villain material. I just think that I like eating meat. It's easier to have a steady diet when I eat meat because meat is cheap and affordable here. And to be honest, it's not my wheelhouse. My focus is on feminism. There are people who are eco-feminists who kind of balance the two, but that's why it's a sub-portion of feminism. It's its own little thing. You can't expect someone whose focus is on human women to also spread onto animal females or whatever. Those are different subjects, and you water down a movement when you force it to cover so many topics. We've talked about basically how feminism has become like nanny activism. Everything has to fall under feminism instead of just being its own damn thing. And that's part of why feminism today is so toothless, because it just has to involve everything and everyone. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can leave them in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.